Good. So thank you very much for the introduction. So very pleased to have our panel on that here. First of all, let's get a very brief introduction from each of you rather than me going to the camera. So Olga, would you like to start?
So thank you very much for having me here. I work for Siemens Negative Emissions Technologies. It's investment arm of Siemens. We invest in negative emissions technologies being carbon removal technologies, in particular methane capture, carbon capture, storage building materials. So anything that helps remove or abate carbon dioxide.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Charlotte from Fortescue Energy. So Fortescue Metals is the fourth biggest iron ore exporter in the world, and Fortescue Energy was set up for two reasons. Firstly, to decarbonise all of the mining operations, so battery electric vehicles, hydrogen fuel trucks, ammonia trains, ammonia ships, with decarbonisation, but also to sell that technology and fuel the products to the rest of the world. So our corporate venture capital firm invests in all the technologies that enable the renewable energy to penetrate into heavy industries such as us.
Good.
Hi, I'm Philippa Martinelli. I'm with the UNICEF Venture Fund and part of UNICEF's Funds for Innovation. We're the first venture fund under the UN umbrella, and we invest in guaranteed technologies that support emerging economies and vulnerable communities, obviously with a lens towards supporting children. And we invest in ClimateTech, therefore that are applied in those contexts, and I think often in challenging humanitarian situations.
Thank you. And Raamu, could you introduce yourself, please?
Yeah, sure. Hi, everyone. I'm sorry I'm not there. Nice to meet everyone. I'm Raamu. Moneyam. I'm based in Munich. So I'm part of BayWa Energy Ventures, working as an investment manager, and we invest in kind of renewable clean tech energy across Europe and Israel. So yeah.
Great. Thank you very much. So a little bit about the context of what we're going to talk about today. Back over 20 years ago, I got frustrated with my corporate wasn't taking on what was happening with new technologies. I felt there needed to be a bridge between the startups and the corporate. So we changed their way of working, whether that's with the .com, whether that's with environmental sort of things. And one of the areas I worked in took a bunch of corporates to meet Tesla in 2008 and said to them, look, the energy system is going to change here, the automotive business, the hydrocarbons of the business. But still, we know how challenging it is to change these large corporates. And what we want to discuss this evening really is, what are these corporates doing? What's their purpose about why they want to do what they're doing? What's the process they engage with startups so that you startups can know when to pitch at the right time to the right sort of corporate? So that's what we're going to try and do this evening. So that's the context. I've got a few questions, but most of the questions I want to come from the audience. So we're going to ask you to be ready to ask your questions and that as well. So I'd like to kick off with each of you to give us what your typical mandate is. What's your purpose and what type of ventures are you investing in?
So UNICEF, obviously, a lot of public funding that comes into the funding deploy, and we really look at de-risking the piece before the private sector tends to take the risk. So we have three phases to our investment, but the first stage is pay tickets. And we look at solutions generally post MVP that people are starting to deploy into the market that they want to scale across the 190 countries where UNICEF has a presence and operates. We typically look at founders that come from a lived experience contexts and understand the places where they're applying solutions, because we think that's the best way to really be impactful in some of the emerging economies where we're working. We have at times looked at solutions that are sort of at MVP and trying to go through a validation loop. We then have two other stages of follow-on funding that we consider companies for. So we have a bridge round and a growth stage, and the growth goes up to about 400, 500,000.
Great. So that's a good context in terms of where you are starting. Charlotte, where do you start in your investment?
Yeah, so Fortescue is a very large corporate. So we invest for two reasons. Firstly, for strategic benefits, but also for financial benefits. And the benefit of a company like Fortescue is that we can sort of have whatever conversation is relevant for a startup. So it might be a traditional venture investment, minority stakes, leading or following as we need to, but we can also do M&A deals later down the line. We can invest in manufacturing, we can JV, we can sort of bring a lot of the FOAC pilot plant funding or Series B plus funding that's actually quite missing in the market today. But in terms of our CVC arm, typically sort of Series A, 1 to 10 billion type checks. And we really invest, to decarbonize. So there's line of sight to potential application with our own operations or growth opportunities, so new markets, new opportunities, sort of maybe adjacent to the areas we're working in today. But obviously, we're financially driven as well. And so, there's new revenue growth, both to us and to the startup, that feedback loop that a corporate venture capital can bring that traditional venture capital doesn't have, just sort of patient money, is really attractive to everyone involved and sort of drives growth and value out there.
Excellent, great context there. Olga.
Yeah, so basically we invest in, I would say, late seed pre-series, A Series A startups. So it needs to be technology readiness level 4 and above. So basically it needs to be outside of the lab. The focus is on carbon removal, basically removing carbon dioxide from atmosphere through different kinds of science engineered solutions. So it's not natural waste solutions, and then permanently storing it either underground or in building materials or some other kind of long duration applications, with potential to go into kind of carbon removal at wind source, so from industrial processes, and then utilizing it, basically recycling carbon, kind of using carbon dioxide in multiple applications.
Right, thank you. Your purpose and your objective and your fund, please.
Yeah, so I work for a corporate, it's called BayWa AG. Our goal is to be a financial investor. We are not a strategic investor in any space. We have an M&A department that does that. So we are purely focused on financial returns on the energy space. So it enables us to look at all the deal flow in the energy space, very capex heavy to the very light version. So it's kind of a broad spectrum that enables us to drive the energy transition. And that's the key here. So for us to participate in that energy transition to kind of drive it as well. So that's the fundamental goal. We do C plus onwards in any energy company that is registered in Europe, including UK. Yeah.
Right. So we're getting a feeling now for the size of the tickets for the investment. What sort of areas they're particularly interested in for their sector and the energy space that they're looking at. As the introduction was, say, £1 of revenue and getting that validation, as you rephrased, particularly Charlotte, is really important. So, how do you help the startups get validation and get sales? What can you do those? Raamu, can we start with you this time? You say you're financial, but you've got M&A. Do you do any sort of links to corporates to help with those validations and doing first sales?
I mean, regardless of whether we invest in a startup, we do link up the startup with our corporate or business unit. It's it kind of decoupled in a way. We let the business unit decide whether they want to work with the startup or not. We do advocate that they should somewhat support the ecosystem, because they are going to be a disruptive force if we don't wake up eventually. So that's one of the things we try to help them connect, regardless of whether they are a portfolio company. Having said that, we also use that deal flow to educate the MDs who are too busy running around, thinking about their own business, to think broadly so that they don't get disrupted. So that is the only function we do internally. The rest of the functions is pretty much out-facing. So yeah.
Great. No, I think that's great context. As we said in the introduction, I've written a book about this, which is called Purpose to Performance, which is about how corporates really have to split their investment decision making, usually from their linking with the business, because they've got different objectives, they've got different timelines. So I would go along with what you're saying, sort of, Raamu. So the rest of the panel here, how do you see the the links in providing sales and validation of that when you're linking to organisations, and yours with your different support organisation?
Absolutely. So we actually spent 12 months really intensely. We spent 12 months. It's not the best.
Really get closer to that.
So we spent 12 months really intensively mentoring the companies that we invest in. So we have a number of different experts, from business to impact measurement to technical specific expertise. Because we invest specifically in frontier technologies, we have a panel of people that are very experienced in scaling those solutions into the markets that we operate in and can give really hands-on experience to support. We also look where it's possible to align with country actors' interests, where there's potential to sort of scale that technology beyond what the venture fund has done in order to enable that founder or that organisation to partner over time, potentially with UNICEF. So we explore those avenues through that 12-month period. We also have co-invested over years with a number of different corporate organisations, and that's another way that we seek to help sort of scale the adoption of the solutions that we invest in.
Great, thank you, Charlotte. And your big quarrying, etc.
Similarly to Raamu, we try and sort of decouple the investment from just the business itself. But obviously there's a lot of links that we try and leverage. So yes, this product market fit, sort of validating that technology, validating the market. We have a lot of expertise internally that we can tap into, and often that expertise is less on does the electrolyzer actually work? It's more on the operational deployment. So we have people in the Pilbara in Australia who operate these mines. They do not understand the technology. That's not their job. That's not their expertise, but they do know how their shift patterns have to operate and the real-term physicalities of how the mine has to operate, that us sat here in Europe and North America as an investment team will never understand because we don't work on these huge, ginormous mines. So that is the benefit from the operational lived experience that the startups are actually really benefiting from, rather than someone with a PhD in similar technology who's sort of within their own bubble. So that's that expertise in the knowledge. But also a corporate venture capital can take a longer term view than a traditional venture capital, often with sort of evergreen funds investing on maybe balance sheets rather than traditional 5-year cycle of the venture capital, which then has to exit its position. Whereas this market is so nebulous and an early stage that actually we need that longer term view, and it's only once the whole market takes off, maybe in much longer periods of time, the revenues come. But also, I think the often underlooked benefit of a corporate venture capital is, yes, there's a deployment potential of your technology, but also as a startup of 3 people in their lab, you might then have to fill in a safety form to get on the site of some subcontractor that requires some training you've never heard of, and it's really complicated. We as a corporate with 1,500 probably have someone whose job is to train people to do that full time. And that's actually the kind of real-time benefit that we are seeing more when a lot of these solutions aren't ready to yet be deployed at scale. It's more of that soft benefit that's actually kind of nothing to do with the technology itself. That is actually the benefit that it's due to bring.
Great, thank you. There are no questions from the audience on this given new explanation, so go ahead on.
Yeah, I think that so I worked in kind of different types of corporate venture capital outfits. So my current job is somewhat different from my previous job. So in the previous job, I was in VP Ventures, and it was quite typical CVC approach. Strategic value was very important. So basically, any startup that would invest basically had to prove that in some sort of like long, near term, medium term, and longer term, there will be a value created to a business inside the group. And that would have taken quite a bit of time to get there. In my current job, the mandate is quite clear in terms of investment criteria. And so I don't need to get sort of like a business sponsorship within the group. It's more around working with other parts of the group to help startup accelerate their R&D from sort of like initial pilot to commercial, demonstrator phase, and then scale up. And fortunately for our startups in Siemens, we have a lot of expertise in chemical engineering, which is applicable to DAG and mineralization, and there are multiple examples of working closely with startups even before we invest in that.
Great, thank you. So do we have any questions or perspectives from the audience before I ask some more? Right, so you're going to be one up there, or the one down here. If you can be brief in your question so we can get more out. Go ahead.
Okay. When you're looking at a new investment, how does your sort of risk assessment compare with that of a typical VC or VC? Do you make a certain number of bets and expect a certain number to come off? Is it that kind of strategy, or is it very different? Go ahead, Charlotte, and then that's Raamu, I think. The two of you can answer this one.
So we describe ourselves as behaving like a financial, but having the benefits of strategic. So, all of the metrics of a traditional VC do apply to us, but sort of as our own LP, we don't have to sort of pander to the needs of 10 LPs that some funds do need to. And so our decisions are completely our own. We don't necessarily need the buy-in. We obviously have an investment committee, but we don't need the buy-in from a specific business unit. There's no requirement that a startup will become an investment or any of that. But in terms of risk profile, I think we look at the same things. What's the team? What's the technology? Does it work? What's the team? Are they ambitious? And are they going to deliver on the vision? Is there a market to sell into? And then, are there other VCs who are similarly sold and willing to make tickets as well? We make seed Series A all the way up to, we've actually just made a Series C, $100 million investment. So, as you go larger, you want to make less of them, but you equally want them to work out. So, financial incentives are still pretty big.
Raamu?
Yeah. I mean, depending on what stage the startup is approaching us. So, like, for example, if it's a seed, the way we approach it is more of what the founders are about and the idea and whether they can get it to Series A and so on. And with the corporate backing of the technical guys who you can somewhat get free, let's say, so you can get a different perspective whether it will actually work in the real world. So that's a leg up. So it kind of adds on because there's no straight formula that you're going to do A, B, and C. Sometimes it goes sideways quickly. So just trying to manage all the stakeholders' perspective and even your own perspective of reading and finding out how the market is kind of like laid out, kind of gives you a risk management mitigation methodology to doing the investment so that you can get the right kind of returns. So I don't really have a straightforward answer. So unfortunately, but each Series A, go-to-market strategy is very key. And, Series B is something similar depending on the tech. And if it's a very heavy CapEx tech, then we have to assess it entirely independent. And especially in the renewable space, there are new techs out there that is unproven. Nobody has a track record. Everybody's feeling it along the way. So there's no real straightforward answer, especially in the energy and the clean tech space. So everybody's trying out something new, and you got to really see what is the market opportunity at the end of the day.
Okay. Anything else to add, or should we get some other questions? Go ahead.
So I just had a question on, so once you invest in a company that's aligned with your objectives and goals, and there's possibly some sort of technology play within the organization, what is the coordination, or is it just left at the board level? I mean, maybe some experiences that would be useful. I mean, is there any expectation that they need something from the corporate, or the corporate needs something from the startup, or is it just left at arm's length? Because it can be a little bit, the expectation might be on the line sometimes.
So for us, it depends, I guess, on the stage. And that if it's an early stage deal, as a corporate, we prefer to follow because there are often perceptions of hooks and strings attached to a corporate, which if you're in a startup of 3 people, the behemoth of a 1,500 person company dictating you have to fill in all these different things, it would just destroy the innovative nimblism of the startup. So we prefer to follow very early stage, and at that point, yes, we're on the cap table, and that might help get funding later down the line, but you wouldn't necessarily know us as any different to a financial entity. Now, at a later stage, we've done Series C investment, and we actually co-led that with breakthrough in the IP. At that point, it might come with a procurement deal, for example, but that's run by the procurement team. We did the ventures investment, we did the investment terms, all of that. But our procurement team alongside it, obviously the linked documents, will do a procurement deal for a number of elections. But yeah, we like to take that one for the director seats, but you wouldn't know us. Yeah.
Olga.
Yeah, just kind of share the way we work is that we would tend to sign sort of like non-binding soft collaboration agreement with what we call roadmap for value creation, just to make sure that the expertise that will be required from Siemens side is in sort of like performance contracts of people who will need to dedicate their man hours in future. So it doesn't kind of slip through the gaps and people are kind of say, yeah, we'll support, but then some other priorities come up. So we kind of attempt to make sure that we have this alignment early on at the point of investment. But we appreciate that it's not binding. It's because things can change, environment can change, but it provides a framework within the organization, because it's a huge organization, to make sure that there will be time to spend with the founders, with the management team, to go through R&D roadmap or scale up plans, etc.
Justin, you have a comment?
I mean, we're slightly differently structured. So we don't take board seats. Actually, the way that we look at investment is public money, and therefore it should go back into public good. So we are non-dilutive, and we encourage businesses to open source component of what they're doing, because we think that's the way that you can get the widest public adoption. And we encourage businesses to look at digital public goods, and that's the registrated directly. We are, I would say, closer to strategic than, well, if you compare us to the private sector, we're closer to a strategic. But I think it's important, and I would say just in terms of advice in engaging with CVC, you understand what the two sides of the organisation do and how they interact with each other. Because the worst thing is to go in assuming that an investment in CVC means that you're going to have a business relationship, and for that to pan out not to be the case. So I think just clarity at the beginning is one of the most important things. And as I would say, as investors, your job is to not overpromise. If that's not the way that your organisation works, and as businesses, it's your job to look at a DD and understand from the market sort of where is that worked and where is that perhaps not, so that you're going in this way.
Excellent, great points. So there's a question at the back.
Thank you. My name is Svetlana, and I have two questions, but they're very related. When you invest, do you normally aim for minority stake in the company, or do you also often buy the majority stake, someone 50% of the equity? And also, how often do you actually do the exit by acquiring startup itself? Is it something that you often aim to do, or is it not a goal?
Great questions. Great questions. I think each of you can take that. Olga, do you want to start?
Yes, I can start. In case of basically Siemens, the strategy around the land strategy around investments is around creating new market.
Swap the mic a bit. Yes. Thank you.
It's around creating new market. So kind of for Siemens wide organization to offer their offer in India in longer term, like decades to come. So therefore, we're not aiming at buying these companies during exit. So it's more around scaling up, basically helping the companies with the highest potential to scale up in future, providing them with expertise, with knowledge, with patient capital to get kind of into that kind of present future and be successful there. But we're not kind of looking to buy them. And therefore, and also because these are quite high risk technologies, late seed, pre-series A, still high risk. We would not buy majority. We would invest minority. It's around portfolio management approaches, around placing kind of multiple bets and anticipating that, few of those will be success.
Yeah, and on that point of corporates are really quite cautious often about taking over the 20-25% because they raise all sorts of implications for their chief financial officers of being able to incorporate those businesses into their results and reputations and things like that. Comments from others on the panel related to this question, Charlotte?
Yeah, I think it's something Raamu said earlier is that we also have an M&A department. So that we as a ventures team take ventures investments, which is minority stakes. And then if later down the line, yes, someone in the company wants to acquire for some reason, well, it goes over to the M&A team, and they would do that. And similarly, we have a strategic investment team who makes strategic investments, and if they want to make a majority stake in a company for a particular reason that they have mandates for, then they can use that money for that.
Right, any comments on that, or do you?
Yeah, I mean, we do only 10 to 12%, and we only target 10% of minority stake, and we will dilute after like Series B or something to support the bigger players to come in to support the startup. And from our position, we never want to take over a startup or buy them for any reason, even if they are strategic. The startup might find us strategic, but we might not find them strategic because of our mandate itself that we have created. So yeah, so we do see a lot of different kind of strategies out there by CVCA themselves. So that I can say, yeah.
From my experience, the one that most sector which does investments and then they tend to get acquired within that sector is in pharmaceuticals and health, because the startups, their main exit route is to those anyway. But they typically often invest together. So you get GSK and AstraZeneca investing in the same startup, and then I guess similar to Charlotte's point here, it's a bidding war then to see who has to pay the biggest price, because these guys want to make a financial return, so they want the biggest exit. And if I'm investing alongside of them, I want their exit as well. So another question over here.
Hi, I'm Justin. Thank you very much for the panel. Really appreciate it. In particular, I like a lot of the nuance about how to take advantage of some of the differences from corporate venture. In particular, Olga, I liked that you have looked at KPIs of specific people on the team, some of their time, should that be required for success in the deal. And I'm curious what founders tell you about why to choose something besides corporate venture. So do you have any views on the different trade-offs in taking corporate venture as compared to traditional venture? Thanks.
I think, well, for us, certainly it's sort of the strategic value of understanding the market and how it operates. Given that we have deployments in the sector and we have, that's the KPIs of our overall business. If you're a venture capital fund that doesn't have deployment potential, you still super expertise. There's a lot of great people working those, but there is nuances of how the market operates that you don't know until you physically try and do it. Also, just a brand recognition that a strategic can bring on the cap table can help bring money and down the line. It might not be a requisite that the startup is deploying Fortescue's operations, but the perception that Fortescue believes in the technology in the market does help attract that funding later down the line. So there's some of the big ones.
Just from my experience with Siemens, startups quite often get attracted to us because they see that we can help them unlock supply chain. Because quite a lot of the companies, they deal with components that might be quite difficult to procure because of multiple competition, and they see that we can help leverage our procurement network, our negotiating power, our strategic partnerships. So it's around kind of scaling up. So that's why they get attracted to us. I also see that from our perspective, we would want to see a mix of strategics and VCs, because strategics, some of them they have a notorious reputation to overpay, or maybe they sort of like blinded by strategic value, kind of financial VCs that will bring sort of like, very much financial lenses. And then startups would also want to see a mix. For example, one of the companies I would like to invest in, they're not very keen to see us because they have lots of other companies that they're interested in terms of their particular value chain that kind of can basically help them unlock, access to new markets or access to feedstock, etc.
Philippa?
Yeah, I would echo Charles' comments about sort of brand and the credibility that strategics can bring. I think also for us, vision alignment and the scale of the markets that we operate in. So businesses having that capacity to pilot in different markets or support to actually build a new solution that's appropriate for a particular jurisdiction. I would say on the sort of diversity and the balance side, particularly, I don't know, working private sector as well as this, and you'll find sometimes the influence of a strategic can be positive or negative, right? In a company's growth journey, in the perception of other organizations to want to engage with it as a client, for example. And so I think always it's just about finding investors that understand what you're trying to build and the way you're trying to build it and want to work with you on that journey rather than imposing upon you too many of their opinions about the way that your business should develop. Because I think as a founder, that's probably the worst thing that you can have an account.
Raamu? Raamu, you have a second on that question?
We do, for example, BayWa RE itself is a big energy company. We build the solar parks and wind parks. So the energy players who we look for, they like our branding and they like to put it along as part of an invested company in there. So it really helps them open up doors. And like what Olga just mentioned, like we did help our portfolio company with the supply chain issue during Corona crisis, because we have such a large purchasing power and footprint. We're able to source from more suppliers easily compared to, so we helped the startup company, even though we are not strategic. We got stakeholders to help us out with the startup challenges. So yeah, so these are the hidden, I would say, benefit or pros and cons right there. So yeah.
Yeah, I think there are pros and cons. One of the first ventures I worked with was invested by Unilever, and they broadcast the fact, of course, that they've got this strategic investor in the marketing area, and they then couldn't convince Procter & Gamble that they were only a minority investor and they weren't just the only ones. It's a double-edged balloon thing. We'll have one more question from the audience too. Thank you. So we've had from the edges and we've had from the middle now.
Looking at the perspective, how do you see your portfolios? How do you think your portfolio will look like in 5 years' time, and which kind of companies you see as main drivers of that?
So for us, the way we see the first wave of ClimateTech 1.0 is that now solar and wind is the cheapest cost of energy. If all you care about is 1 kilowatt of intermittent energy, solar and wind just is cheaper than fossil fuels. But 75% of emissions are still from the energy sector, from the combustion of fossil fuels to heat power. Only 5% of final energy demand is from renewables. So there's clearly a massive market opportunity and need for technologies that drive that low cost and renewable energy into the industries that must decarbonize. So I think that what we're seeing in the market is a shift from investment into those generation assets, solar and wind. That's really not a ventures play anymore. That's kind of the manufacturing scale up play. And so now venture investments are into those technologies that enable that renewable energy to penetrate industry. So things like process electrification, grid management, how to manage variable intermittency, demand side management, renewable transport fuels, hydrogen, ammonia, synthetic hydrocarbons, direct air capture, all of that is needed. And I think both hardware and software.
So that's where your portfolio is going way up.
Yeah.
Okay, great. Raamu, can you give us your perspective on what sort of your portfolio is going?
I couldn't hear you. There was a bit of an echo towards the end. I'm sorry.
So can you give us an idea of what's in your portfolio and shares you're going to be investing in?
We are kind of very open. We have recently looked at quite a number of EV charging and heat transportation or heat storage kind of tech. We are kind of open with a lot of technology, but we are quite excited about particularly the decentralized grid solution, which I think the European market is struggling, but we recently did an investment, European company, but focused in Africa for decentralized grid. So we are kind of excited about that solution that I think we kind of somewhat need that in Europe. And we are somewhat heavy on the hardware side in our portfolio as well. So we are not shying away, which is going to be the true solution provider. And the software is going to be the next level optimization on top of the hardware. So.
Thank you. Olga?
I would say that probably in the medium term, it would be technologies that remove historical carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, using kind of direct air capture or ocean capture, ocean river capture, and then storing it permanently. And then kind of in the longer term, I would see our portfolio investments also in the area of using carbon dioxide in applications where currently fossil fuels or derivatives of fossil fuels are being used.
Right. And Philippa, you expect?
So our portfolio is much wider than just climate. This is the first year we've been ClimateTech. We've done a lot of medicine tech, financial inclusion, water and sanitation. And at the moment we're looking at we continue to portfolio with frontier technologies, and that means frontier UNICEF and some frontier for other industries. So we're particularly focused on AI, blockchain, drones as applications into these areas, and also things that can democratize access, right? So the cost to deploy and the scale that you can get to with some of these solutions, that's where we want to see tipping points where we can. For example, we invested in a company this year that's trying to democratize access to solar panels in Latin America, and using AI to improve efficiency in solar and wind space. And so can you construct a financial model around it that makes it accessible for emerging economies? We've also invested in more early warning systems and flood related issues because recovery technologies, because again, how is climate change going to play out for the communities that they're engaging with, and what technology do you need to actually put in place to help them adapt, as well as sort of transition.
Okay, great. So I've got two very quick questions to ask the.
May I hijack a discussion with a question?
Go ahead.
So the question is, I would like all people here to go away with some sort of hard practical insights on how to work with corporate VCs. Can you give this quick advice on how to search for one, how to discover one, how to approach one, how to sell yourself to the heart of a corporate VC, and when, even if you managed to seduce the corporate VC, when you shouldn't go to suit at all. Is it
right? Each of you can go through that with your perspectives on that question. Go ahead.
Mine. And I have a working one. So I think this one's okay.
Yeah. Cool.
I think there's one answer that answers quite a lot of those things, which is you need to really understand whether it's strategic or financial, what is driving that corporate VC, and whether that aligns with what you need to do as a business. And in building that relationship, in doing that pitch, you want to understand what it is you want out of them and whether they can give it to you. And don't wait for the investor to come and then go, oh, well, now we've got this relationship, can we have X, Y, and Z? You want to be understanding that much before, and you're not overstepping the mark to ask those questions before you go into it, because then you're setting both you and them up for success rather than creating a misalignment of expectations.
My answer is pretty much exactly the same as Philippa's. I think that, anyone can invest money, it's much harder to make money, and it really comes down to the strategic alignment of the people that you're engaging with. And I can stand here and give the pitch about Fortescue, the pitch about Siemens, but you interact with the individuals on a day-to-day basis. And if you're not strategically aligned going into this, it won't work. And that has to be at a human level. And, even if the technology is great, you can't work with the founder, or if you don't believe in their ambition or their drive or their enthusiasm, then the best technology in the world isn't going to succeed. So I think, it's having those conversations early on again, like we've mentioned before, not expecting something from a corporate that actually doesn't come from the corporate venture capital arm of that corporate, understanding very much the differences between them and what you're asking for and what you're getting, knowing that before you sign the deal.
Sure, Olga, and then Raamu.
I will try to be brief, but I will start that for CVCs, I think the majority of investments that they will either apply ways to generate more revenues, which basically means enabling, basically investing in startups to enable access to new market or kind of create new market. And then the second one is around cost reduction. So I'd say this for performance improvements or direct cost reductions. So I think for a startup to win the heart of CVC, it's basically to understand, how they can help these corporates either increase revenues or reduce costs. And that requires understanding not only of the legacy operations of the corporate and also where they're looking to go, because lots of the corporates are now following mega trends like circular economy, mobility, carbon removal, etc. Just kind of understanding where they want to be, and then pitch kind of say, that's how we're going to help you. Create a new market for your offering, or that's how we can augment your existing offering with more products. That's how we can help you sustain the market share. I think that would definitely kind of win the hearts.
Yeah, thank you. Raamu, your perspective on this?
I think relationship, and that's the key. Recently I spoke with a startup. I met with them for 2 times, and he was saying, "Are you excited to invest?" Yes, I'm excited, but you're a stranger still to me. I still need to get to know you. So it's going to be a process, and we're going to spend the time to get to know each other and see whether we can work together for another 7 years, because that's the minimum timeline that we are looking at an investment thesis. And that relationship building, the technology can be awesome. I've spoken to some startup, and it's amazing. And I would not want to work with the founder, simple as that. And so for me and most of my team members, we focus on the relationship building as well as how we can get the execution done for the technology to be successful in the market. And that's very key. And it's not going to be done overnight. That's our thesis and perspective. That's how we approach it. Very personal, but that's how a business gets done because you have to deal with them on a day-to-day basis. There's a lot of challenges.
Definitely, I'll reiterate that. We've heard this evening about what's the purpose for why these corporate ventures are doing it, and what's their process in terms of the stage and how they go through it. So that's the purpose and that's the process. But in my book, the middle P is people. It's the people that these investors have to relate to in their organizations, who they have to relate to in their partners, in their funds. So partners is next, then performance measures is the last one in my 5 Ps. So understanding what these corporate ventures want and building the relationships. And I'm a Green Angel investor as well as a Green Angel Syndicate, which got 350 members. We've got EIS fund. We're also building now a corporate fund. And I introduced one of those ventures and that to 5 different corporate. They don't need the money at the moment. They're early stage like the ones who presented that this evening. But the relationship that he's now built with the chemicals businesses and the consumer package businesses that they want to aim for later is building that relationship. So ask for advice and build a relationship, and the money will come. Ask for money, and you'll probably get some advice. So, can I ask you to thank the panel, please, for the great